We're going to hear from Kirsten Campbell, who is the Allied Health Project professional with ILA in Western Australia. She's going to present on practical tools and resources for aged care providers on wellness and reablement. She's got a background as an OT who's worked across the full spectrum of aged care, from hospital through day therapy, community home visiting and nursing homes. She's also works as a lecturer, tutor for occupational therapy students at Edith Cowan University. So Kirsten, we're very interested to hear what practical tools and resources you can point us to.
Terrific. All right. Thank you for having me. It's great to be able to speak on the back of all of those speakers this morning. I actually feel like they all read my presentation before I got here. We've got so much to speak to with regard to what they talked about and integrating that into this discussion late in the morning. So welcome to the presentation. This discussion is going to build on the content we presented earlier today. I'm aiming to take those ideas and incorporate them into an accessible approach for implementing wellness and reablement. So really talking sort of quite generally about our approach and some ideas rather than really specific tools, because, well, that would be a full day workshop in and of itself. But I'm really wanting to focus on trying to find ideas about communicating wellness and reablement to our clients and reaching a common understanding of what that looks like for both aged care workers and our clients. And it was interesting listening to Nick Morgan report that he feels that he has, and I think if I use his words, he's been beaten about the head for the this idea of reablement, which a lot of people don't understand. And even our discussion with Angie Slater, Angie was saying that she doesn't use the word reablement. So what is the discussion that we can have with people that makes sense to aged care workers and to the people that we're working with? Now, there is going to be a little bit of audience participation. It's not scary, but I think we so rarely get to come together as a group that sometimes it's really nice to know if we are sharing common experiences. So all I really need you to do is to orientate yourself to the React button, because I'm going to ask you to use that a little bit, and to the chat function, because I might ask you to pop a couple of things in there too. So to get started, I'm actually going to share an image with you. It was featured in an online article, and the article was called "The Dread of Getting Dressed." And this is the image. So what I'm curious about is, have you ever gone to the wardrobe and looked at the wardrobe full of clothes and thought you had nothing to wear? Have you ever looked in your wardrobe and thought you don't have anything suitable for that occasion? Yet start on the React buttons. Have you ever wondered, I'm going out, but what's everyone else wearing? Have you ever had the experience where you put on an outfit and it looked great last week and you look in the mirror today and it looks terrible? And I don't think I've ever seen so many thumbs up. Have you ever experienced the disappointment of going to the underwear drawer and realizing that only the uncomfortable undies are left? Okay. So lots and lots of thumbs up and commonalities there. You might be wondering why we're starting with this discussion. There are a lot of complexities to getting dressed. Like, you've all expressed this. There are times when actually getting dressed is difficult. Why is that? We do it every day. Sometimes we do it many times a day. So why is it so hard? And the reality is that dressing is actually really complex and demands a lot of us. And this is a discussion that we're going to come back to later. So hold all of those thoughts. So just by way of introducing you to what we're going to be doing today is really, when we walk away, I'm hoping that people have built an awareness that these supposedly simple daily activities that we do actually require complex skills and abilities. And so by doing those activities are actually essential for wellness and optimizing independence for older adults. And those activities can be used in reablement. And also hopefully sort of start to discuss a wellness and reablement message that's really meaningful to healthcare teams and clients. Okay, just a quick word on this presentation, which is called "Everything You Do for Me, You Take from Me." It's not my quote, and I wish it was. It's in fact attributed to the famous educator Maria Montessori, and we know her work has significantly impacted the education and aged care sectors. I would like to clarify this discussion is not about the Montessori approach. I know that came up a little earlier in discussions, but this presentation is absolutely inspired by the quote, which I think really embodies the principles of wellness and reablement. Okay, I think it's always important to approach these discussions from a point of honesty, and I think we should always start by recognizing that there are very real barriers to implementing wellness and reablement. It is a complex area for providers. And so this is by no means an exhaustive list, but some of the ones that I think perhaps we can speak to during the presentation. So we know that there are time and financial constraints that providers are trying to juggle. The issue of lack of access to human resources has come up on multiple occasions in the discussions today. We know that there's not exactly a wealth of support workers. The issue of allied health access has come up on multiple occasions. And they're very real issues that we are dealing with. Developing a really strong awareness and knowledge of what wellness and reablement principles are, and then I think there's still a lack of confidence in actually care planning around reablement and delivering reablement interventions. I think that we are in a process of transition where we're trying to move away from a system that had very low expectations of older adults, where we cared for adults. And we've had great discussions this morning from Joanna Maxwell and also Pat Sparrow around the ageism issues that are really problematic when we're trying to implement reablement. I think we need to move from this space of caring for towards caring about. And so I think hopefully those discussions this morning with Joanna had really given you some new perspectives about your expectations of older adults. And then the last one that I would really like to sort of focus on is this one, and we hear this a lot, that clients don't want reablement. And so if you have ever heard a client tell you, I just want a cleaner, I'm paying you to help me, I don't like exercises, what's the point? I'm too old, or the government is just trying to save money. Would you mind just popping into the react button and letting me know if you've heard any of those things before? Right. Okay, so another flood there of reactions. And we hear this a lot from providers. Okay, so we're going to have a chat today about addressing some of these barriers. Firstly, by looking at identifying the wellness and reablement opportunities in daily life. You'll notice I am making references on occasion to wellness and reablement because I think a lot of the content we discussed today supports wellness, but can also be utilised in a reablement perspective, and they can be difficult to extricate. Although there will be times that I really sort of hone in on reablement because it's our core business today. So, if we can identify the opportunities in daily life, the advantage to this is that they're really familiar activities. They're familiar to our staff and they're familiar to our clients. And that makes them much easier to utilize in that reablement space. When people are really familiar with those activities, it demystifies wellness and reablement because suddenly we're just using strategies that are embedded in what we do every day. And also, if we can learn to use daily activities really effectively, they require fewer resources because they're usually right there under our nose in somebody's home. So when we're trying to deal with time constraint issues and resources, it can be really helpful to use what's right under our nose. The other thing that I really want to talk about is that this idea about how do we support informed decision making. So Angie had a really great discussion about if you're going to make decisions about me, you should be doing it with me. Um, but how do we give people the information about reablement that makes them want it? How do we get people to demand reablement rather than just be passive recipients of it, or they do it because we tell them that they should, and that's where we see the resistance. And then finally, in addressing those barriers, I think that if we can find a really accessible, succinct messaging that we can use with people, that's really going to promote people's engagement in reablement. Okay, so we've talked about the fact that reablement's a really difficult word, and I think sometimes when people think about it the first time, they might think about it as being rehabilitation or they don't know what it is at all. And I think a lot of people think that reablement looks like this, like lots of exercises. And it's important to reinforce that the evidence is absolutely clear that regular, moderately vigorous exercise is important for all people of all ages. It's an evidence-based strategy for promoting reablement, there's absolutely no doubt. However, and this is your chance to go back to the react button again, how many of you have worked with clients who either don't want to do exercises or they struggle with the consistency that's required to actually benefit from those exercises? Yeah. So it's really hard. We know it's important, but sometimes the compliance is problematic. We've also talked about, shortages of staff, particularly allied health professionals. So if you don't have ready access to a physiotherapist or an exercise physiologist, how easy or how appropriate is it for us to be trying to develop exercise programs for a client? And the answer is it's probably not, because they need to be very well considered. So, for the purposes of today, if we are trying to help people live independently, build on the things that they can already do, and have a very practical approach and build their confidence in the things that they need to do every day, why don't we just use the activities that we do every day to help us in reablement? So, just a very quick recap, and I don't think this is new knowledge to anybody, but we know that the key factors for promoting health span, so not lifespan, but health span, so having more good years, the key elements are maintaining our physical abilities, maintaining our cognition, promoting emotional well-being, and maintaining social connections with family, friends, and communities. And I really love the conversations that have been popping up in the chat today about people really recognizing how important that social connectivity is. And it's really it's really great to see everyone already on board with that in anticipation of this discussion. So, what we often don't think of is that all of those things are actually embedded in the things that we do every day. This does not have to be a sort of a rocket science approach. It's all there right under our noses. So, we're going to come back to our poor woman who's experiencing dread of getting dressed. And I'm wondering if you've ever thought that all of those health sustaining factors, have you ever wondered that they were, or acknowledged that they're actually embedded in the task of getting dressed? So, dressing is a highly complex task. It requires extensive physical and cognitive demands, and it has emotional and social aspects to it. And if you don't believe me, we are going to explore that in a little bit more depth. So, what are the benefits of getting dressed? So, this is your chance to jump into the chat. I'd like you just to have a think about what were the physical abilities that you had to have this morning when you got dressed? What did your body need to be able to do for you to get dressed? And if you don't mind just popping a couple of ideas into the chat, I'd really appreciate it so we can have a look. Reaching, stretch, yep, balance, bending, stepping, choosing or selection. Yes, all of those things. Already coming up with lots of really great ideas. Thanks for that. Much appreciated. So, if we come back to this little table here, here's just a very quick summary, and it's not comprehensive because, like, that sensory aspect, I could break that down into a lot more sort of elements, sort of even in that space. But here's like a quick summary of some of the physical skills that we need to be able to elicit to get dressed. And it's actually quite considerable. We can do the same thing for cognition. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time to explore all of these in lots of depth. I'm just kind of trying to achieve a bit of a visual for you. So, As far as cognition goes, lots of cognitive aspects to trying to get dressed. And I know there was lots of discussion this morning about, well, how do we do reablement for people with dementia? Well, we still encourage them to use the cognitive skills as part of getting dressed, even if they can't do the whole task. Which bits can they still do? And we're really encouraging them to do that. There are emotional aspects associated with getting dressed. And we all know that if you went to when you go to a job interview and you're wearing your best professional clothes, it gives you confidence. You know that when you put on your favorite tracksuit pants and you lie on the couch, you feel relaxed. When Saturday rolls around and you put on your jeans and your t-shirt, you know it's the weekend. There's a lot of sort of emotional cues that come from getting dressed. And there's social aspects to getting dressed. It's how we express our identity. It's how we belong. It's how we engage with others. We have circumstances in which we have to meet expectations in certain social environments. So there's a whole lot of social components associated with getting dressed as well. And now, if we look at them all together and think about that task that probably took you only about 5 minutes this morning, you actually utilized all of these skills in that 5 minutes. Okay. Now, is that making sense to everybody? Is everyone sort of happy with that? Great. All right. So now I want you to have a think about everything that you do every day. So we've looked just at getting dressed. And then if you consider the host of things that you do between waking up this morning and going to bed at night, and then if you think about all of the things that you do over the course of the week, now try to imagine all of the physical, cognitive, social, and emotional skills and benefits that you get from doing all of those activities. And you do a really wide variety of things. You do self care, we do things to look after our homes, we participate in the community, socialize with people, and indulge in activities we enjoy. And when we do that, we create a very rich tapestry of life, and every single activity in it, no matter how seemingly simple, requires skills and abilities that help to sustain health, well-being, and independence. When we start taking those activities away from people, our tapestry of life starts to deteriorate. So every activity that is not done represents skills not used and skills not maintained. And I'm sure that you're starting to see where we're going with this conversation. So every single activity that we do has demands of us, and so the skills that we need to use, and hence also then benefits us. So every single activity has a physical, cognitive, emotional, and social component. And that's where, from a KeepAble point of view, our moniker is this idea of every opportunity matters. There's not an activity that we do that doesn't matter, because it will bring something to us. Okay, so further to our sort of perspective on reablement, if we start to provide premature help to somebody, if we start doing activities for them that they could otherwise do themselves, we are actually robbing them of the related health and well-being benefits. We are actually exacerbating or promoting premature disability. So let's go back to thinking about those barriers and that we identified earlier and some of these strategies that we can sort of embed these ideas into. So how are we going to identify reablement opportunities in daily life? What is our accessible, succinct messaging that we can share with clients? And how are we supporting informed decision making to get people on board with reablement? So the first part about identifying wellness and rehab opportunities in daily life is about really helping staff to learn the value of everyday activities for health and well-being. Um, This idea of everything you do for me, you take from me, we have actually developed quite a few resources that are available for free on KeepAble that will help your staff start to develop this skill set. So we have an e-learning module on everything you do for me, you take from me. We have a bite-sized presentation. And so if for people that haven't seen our bite-sized modules, they are a PowerPoint presentation accompanied with a facilitator's guide and practical activities that you can present in your staff meetings. So it's all done for you. And we are currently working on some Reablement Essentials content. Now, our Reablement Essentials we are building on at the moment, but they are designed to be downloadable, printable resources that you are then able to use in a really practical way, either in staff development or with your clients. In identifying those opportunities, would really like to carry on from the back of that great discussion from Angie about talking to the clients about the activities they currently do or used to do or want to do, particularly the purposeful ones. What I loved about that story is often the resistance to reablement might be around, doing the housework. I don't want to do my house cleaning. And so it might be, where do I find another avenue? And so if I use that really lovely example that Angie gave us about the gentleman that was walking on the beach, if I'm thinking about him as an OT or even as a physio, I'm thinking, well, probably what was happening for him was maybe his balance was deteriorating and his endurance wasn't very good and his strength may have been deteriorating and probably his mood was declining as well. And I can probably assume that if those things are happening, they're probably impacting other things in his life as well, like maybe his ability to clean the house. But it is not interested in learning to do the cleaning. Let's jump in and really build those skills to get him walking on the beach, which is really important. And then once he becomes more confident with that and his mood starts to improve, the chances that we're going to be able to transition somebody into those other aspects of daily living as well are probably facilitated. So we don't always need to start at the bathing and the cleaning. We might start, somewhere else in that really vast range, that big tapestry of activities that people have at their disposal. So thanks, Angie, for giving us such a great example that we could tack on to this discussion. Okay, we talked about the fact that it can be quite complicated to work out how to care plan for reablement. So I just wanted to flag a really simple approach. And for some people, this might be very intuitive, but maybe others it's not, or maybe you're new to the area and you're just like a really sort of easy strategy to apply. But maybe if we're watching somebody do an activity of some description, it might be bathing. Start by thinking about what can they definitely do. If we think about all those parts, and again, Angie talked about task analysis, let's think about all the parts of bathing. What can they definitely do? And all those things that they can definitely do, encourage them to continue to do it. Do not step in there. There will sometimes be things that the person definitely can't do. So reablement isn't always about making a person 100% again. That may not be possible. There may always be some things that they can't do, but let's provide the support there if that's what they need. But our opportunities for reablement sit in the space of what might they be able to do. So sometimes when we watch someone doing something, we can see that they might be having a little bit of difficulty, but they're really close. And maybe with a little bit of like strength training or balance work or a piece of equipment or a modification to the environment, we could probably get them over the line and push them into the definitely can do space. So if we can encourage all of our aged care workers, from our support workers to our therapists to our coordinators that go in and visit a person in their home and see them doing activities, really be alert to the might be able to do space, because that's where these great opportunities sit. When reablement works really well, the might do's eventually become the can do's and we don't need to help anymore. And as the person is improving, the can't do's slowly become the might be able to do and give us that next step forward. So hopefully that's a helpful way for people to think about care planning in this space. Just wanted to share this with you, one of our tools that we have on the KeepAble website. This is part of one of the activities that we have in our Everything You Do For Me, You Take From Me bite-sized learning activity. So just to recap, our bite-sized learning is our PowerPoint presentations that you can use in your workplaces. But we developed this. I'm not sure how well you can sort of see it on screen at the moment, so I'll just show you some little sort of snippets from that. This is designed to get people to start thinking about what are some of the skills or abilities that my client might need to get this particular job done. So it might be walking on the beach, or it might be having a shower, or it might be cooking a meal. We can use it as a prompt to start thinking about, oh, where do I think the problems are lying? It's also a really great tool for prompting observation skills. And so, particularly if you've got a support worker or allied health assistant that's working with a therapist, it gives them a language and some ideas in which to start feeding back to one another about what's going on for the client, which can really help with our intervention. And you can see we've broken these down for, excuse me, all the different areas. So lots of things for people to think about. The other thing that we're working on, and this is a really good opportunity to have this discussion with you as providers. KeepAble really hopes to work, or does work, and hopes to work more in a really collaborative way with providers. So what I'm actually showing you here is some draft content. This is not ready to roll, but we would really love people, providers, to say they would really love to help us develop this or give us feedback. And so these two documents are examples of something I'm working on at the moment about, I guess they're worked examples of this, what are the health and well-being benefits of doing day-to-day activities? And I've worked one up for going to a cafe with friends. So when someone is starting to withdraw into their home, how do we explain to them how important it is to keep going to a cafe with friends? And we can show them that it will benefit you this way physically and that way cognitively and this way socially and emotionally. And I'm hoping that a tool like this will really help heighten the awareness with our support workers and also with our clients. And if people are feeling like these are potentially a useful resource, the plan is to develop a series around lots of different types of activities that we do every day. And you can see from this that we're really acknowledging that the social element is really important, the community engagement element. Reablement is not just about having your shower and cooking your dinner and making the bed. Okay. So I'm seeing a few thumbs up and hearts, and I'm really hoping that's indicative of the fact that maybe people would like to help us give feedback on this and develop these kinds of resources. So again, this is just a draft one at the minute. Okay, so moving on to our next sort of thing that we're wanting to address, what is the accessible, succinct messaging maybe that we can use? I really like this idea of everything you do for me, you take from me. And one of the reasons that I like it is that I can see the potential for it to almost cause a little bit of outrage for our clients. Where a lot of our clients are in the space of, this is what I expect from you. I'm expecting my cleaning and I'm expecting my shopping done. If they actually understand that when I do that for you, I am potentially compromising your health span, I'm compromising your independence. Um, the surveys that Hillary talked about said that clients want, older people actually want to be able to take control of their aging journey and they're fearful of losing independence. So if we have a message that says, me jumping in and doing this for you is actually detracting from all of those things, I'd like to think that they might have a second thought about it. And also, again, our moniker about every opportunity matters. If we're able to maybe give this idea to our clients about every single thing that you can do for yourself is going to enhance your function, enhance your ability to stay at home, enhance your quality of life, maybe this is more of a accessible message than, okay, we're doing reablement. And then I think this is such an important one, the informed decision making. Hilary alluded to this, or didn't allude to it. She was quite specific about it in response to some questions in her presentation, where she said people are not well informed. They're not informed about the aging science. They don't understand that 75% of their aging journey is influenced by their lifestyle choices. Um, if people understood more about what aging science said, about what they're capable of, um, I think that we would probably see a greater uptake. And I think my concern is that there's a lot of expectation that aged care workers will just jump in and do reablement, and we have an expectation that our clients will just jump in and do reablement, but we don't do a lot of the preparation work beforehand, both with our aged care workers and our clients, about really establishing the significance of reablement and the realities of aging science, which are actually really positive. So I think that if we can find really good ways to share information with clients, it's more likely to make them want it or even hopefully demand reablement. And how can we share knowledge about aging science and the evidence with clients? And we do have some resources at KeepAble. We've got the Everything You Do For Me content, which is currently quite provider focused, but as you've seen, we're starting to work on some resources that you can use with your clients. And then we've also got some really great work on Life Curve, and you've heard both Hilary and Nick Morgan refer to Life Curve this morning. We've got e-learning content on Life Curve and how you can learn to understand Life Curve and how you can have conversations with your clients about Life Curve so they can understand what are my risks and what can I do to promote my positive aging journey. And there's some really great downloadable, printable resources there as well to help you have those conversations with clients. One thing that like a take-home message that I love from Life Curve, and Hilary mentioned it in her presentation earlier, was if your client realized that having difficulty cutting your toenails was actually the first indicator that you are now in a risk category for problematic age-related decline, would that make you wake up? Would that make you think you had something that you should do about it? And if you could have a visual image of the life curve that showed you that if I take action now, I can actually have I can have really great function for a really, really, really long time. Or if I don't take action now, I'm going to have a precipitous decline and I'm not going to enjoy my later years as much. So we've got this great evidence-based indicator. We've got a terrific visual tool that we can use with our clients, and I'd really start loving getting some feedback from maybe from industry that are game enough to start using it and see if you find it helpful. Okay, so in summary, I'm really hoping you're walking away today realizing that the wellness and reablement opportunities abound in the things that we do every day. We need to help staff want to do wellness and reablement, and we need to help clients want reablement. A really easy way to think about how to go about it is just thinking about what can my client do for themselves, keep getting them to do it. What can't they do? I'm happy to help you with that. What might you be able to do? There's my reablement opportunity. And finally, the takeaway message really is when we do tasks for a person that they can do themselves, we are robbing them, we are stealing from them the physical, cognitive, and emotional skills for living. And if you would like to get in touch with us, we're doing a lot of development of content at the moment. We'd really love you to connect with us. We can create resources in response to your needs. So please go and visit us at keepable.com.au, and thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you very much, Kirsten. Very comprehensive and nice and practical too. There's a couple of questions come through in the chat. The first is from Danny, and it's a question relating to older people who have sensory issues. So hearing loss, sight loss, speech difficulties, and how they might be assisted to keep social engagement up. And it's sometimes a struggle to get people to actually commit to that when they've got a major sensory problem. And I've had many friends who have hearing loss in one ear or both in one case, and they find any engagement they have in an open area, such as cafe or restaurant, just really difficult to hear.
Yep.
And so, hasn't impeded their desire to get out as of yet. We're in our early 60s. It might begin to impact before too long, but it hasn't dulled their preparedness to socialise. But obviously, for some people, it can be a barrier. What can you do about dealing with that?
There's obviously a lot of complexities there, particularly that every person is presenting very differently. I think, further to Angie's conversations, that opportunity to really sit down and explore. So people generally don't have, not generally, but a lot of people don't have hearing difficulty in all scenarios. So, how many, when you're in a group of how many people does this start to get difficult? What is it? Is it the difficulty with hearing, or are people talking too quickly? Are you in environments that have lots of really hard surfaces? So, say for instance, if you're going to a cafe or a restaurant, and I'm sitting inside and I've got all of this noise of scraping chairs and tables bouncing off the walls and those sorts of things. And this is where we're really looking at, working with that. We do know that sometimes in that reablement process, the activity may not look exactly the way the person used to do it. We can try and get as near to it. So maybe it's that matter of modifying the activity a little bit. Maybe when it's possible, I go out with fewer people, or we choose we explore environments in the community that are much more conducive to conversation. Some restaurants almost have sort of little breakout rooms. Can we go and sit in there?
Yeah.
Is it quieter to sit outside than it is inside in these really noisy, sort of busy environments? Sometimes it's a matter of really helping people just advocate for themselves, because a lot of people find it, they actually don't think to say to somebody, would you mind just sort of slowing down your speech, or I'm having some difficulty hearing you. Can you say that again? So I think we can come at it from quite a lot of different perspectives. But then I also think that if you're still not getting across the line, then certainly going to like your specialist organizations is really important. And there's really great organizations that deal, specifically with vision impairment, hearing impairment, and really go to them for your expertise. So do your exploration the best that you can in your environment. I'd say if you've got some difficulties in the first instance, refer to your OT or maybe a speech pathologist if you have access to one with the hearing issues. And then you're still not getting resolution, consider going to some other organization. So that's a few ideas. It's obviously very unique to every person.
Yeah. There's been quite a bit of discussion about dignity of risk, and the importance of enabling people to make choices that might be to try and meet their goals, but will have a degree of risk attached to them.
Yeah.
And I thought that overlapped a little bit with your discussion about how we communicate to older people about the opportunities and the desirability, indeed, of having a wellness reablement approach. And that quote, everything you do for me, you take from me. You were recommending that we use that as a frame to talk about that. But that then potentially leads into having a discussion with people about, and you understand, don't you, that there are risks attached if you do this. How do you have that conversation? And what do you do when you get to the end and the older person just says, no, I've made my decision. I know what is best for me. I don't want to do that.
Yep. There's lots of questions in that question. um, I think coming back to, if we come back to providing reablement opportunities, what is the risk of not doing it?
Yeah.
So and this is where, so I only learned about Life Curve when I first started with ILA, and oh my goodness, I love it. when I look at life curve and I realize that when you stop at this particular point, or if you're having difficulty at this certain point, if you do nothing, your trajectory or your downhill trajectory is steep and fast. There's a risk. That's a much bigger risk than trying to Reable people and give them sort of more longevity with good years. So I think sometimes we're very tempted to jump straight to the idea that it's risky, when actually sometimes it's risky not to.
Yeah.
I think if we sit in that, we talked about that can do, can't do, might do sort of idea. Often when we're sitting, if we're trying to take our reablement opportunities in the might do space, they're often quite safe spaces to work in, because that person's often really close to being able to do it for themselves, but they can't quite. And that's where we know that just providing that bit of support can get them across the line. If you dive straight into like that, if you consider that a red zone of like, oh no, you just can't do that, and dive straight into that, I think you're probably elevating risk for yourself and the client.
Yeah.
And then you know what? We all make decisions, I think, in life that are sometimes not congruent with what other people in our lives think, and older people have just as much right to do that as we do. We then maybe just need to be in a position to say, actually, that is such high risk. I don't think that we can actually help you with that. Here are recommendations that we think will, work best for you.
Yeah.
Here are options for you. They have as much right not to take them on board as the rest of us.
Yeah, and obviously, kind of underlined what you're saying. You explore, if they don't want to do one particular activity,
Yeah.
what's a similar activity that's, is part of daily life, which if they do that will strengthen them in similar ways, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we start using sort of that observation checklist, oh, if I notice their balance isn't that good, well, if they don't want to work on their balance in the shower, maybe they want to work on their balance doing some pruning in their garden, and you're going to get the flow through to other activities. And then it's also, if we go back to Angie's discussion again about, it's about developing rapport and trust, and people recognizing that you're there, for them, to get them to be able to do the things that are important to them. And then you're more likely to get that. Once you've got that rapport, you might be able to ease them into some other things that maybe they were initially resistant to.
Yeah, and I think one other thing is you can often come back to a discussion further down the line. I mean, let's just speak from personal experience. I had a stroke at the end of 2022, and it impacted my verbal abilities as well as having an impact on balance and other issues.
Yeah.
And for somebody that does as much public speaking as I do, having that knocked out for quite a, for a good few weeks, that it was really majorly impacted. And it was just that the brain needed to build some new connections
Yeah.
to be able to find the right word in the right context. And even just the other night, I stumbled on somebody's name and I just couldn't pull the name. And it was someone I know really well,
I think you're
so
on your own there.
yeah, I'm sure I'm not. But my point is that, firstly, that did get better and got better quite quickly, really. When you look in the big picture of things. But there was certainly a time when I couldn't do certain activities. I was physically very weak for quite a period of time. You got deconditioned because you spend 4 or 5 days in hospital. You don't walk around, all of those things that happen to older people. But I began gradually to resume a more normal life, and I'm now pretty much back doing everything. I've still got some long-term consequences I have to manage. Whenever I close my eyes in the shower, I get unsteady, and but if you know those things, you can, work around them. But I think often for older people, if you can step back, accept what they're saying in the short term, I just really don't feel up to that today. That sort of very common comment you get from an older person. But if you can come back to maybe a week or a month later, how about we try and do that again? Let's get you out to the cafe or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and, on that day when you turn up and someone doesn't feel like doing up for all of it, well, we know that every opportunity matters, so even if you can do part of it and you don't do all of it, then you're still getting somewhere.
Yeah. One question in the chat: how does the assessment of risk fit with WHS work health and safety legislation?
Yeah, I saw that. I'm just a bit curious about whether that's pertaining to, aged care worker, to the workforce or whether it's pertaining to the client.
I would assume when you talk about work health and safety, it's usually the workforce that's the
That's what I would have
primary
thought.
focus. Yeah.
Yep. Um, there's lots of different ways to tackle that too. I mean, one is that, you have to have an organizational approach to that, obviously, with lots of different input. And, one of the things that, particularly when we're looking at risk, is I really don't think it should sit on the shoulders of one person. And that's why we have multidisciplinary teams. Now, I understand that we've also got complexity because access to allied health is really difficult. But maybe if there are sort of goals and activities that we're wanting to work on, then it may need to maybe be on hold until we can get a team around us to engage in that problem solving.
Yeah.
Um, Particularly when we've got issues about cognition. So that's really the time to bring your OT in, and then if we're looking at sort of like the high levels of balance and mobility issues, let's bring our physio in. When you're really looking at significant risk that and you're concerned if you're concerned for your workers, then I think you have to err on the side of caution. They shouldn't be doing anything that's putting them at overt risk. And if we're
Exactly.
looking, I don't think that's negotiable. But I do think we need to be more open about risk. I think sometimes we see risk. I think we're hyper vigilant often, not all the time, but I think we're often hyper vigilant. And often that perception of risk is actually almost promoted with that ageism content that we talked about this morning.
The
Oh, you're
benevolent.
90 years old, we don't know if you should be doing that. And so this ageism thing keeps creeping in as well. So I'm not wishing to diminish the significance around risk analysis. It's really important, but use your team really well, and also just second guess yourself and ask about the real risk. And if you go back to using something like that observation skills checklist, it's going to get you to think bit by bit. Is the issue with balance? Is it with strength? Is it a problem with their thinking skills? And that's also going to help you try to nut out, well, what's causing the risk?
Yeah.
Yeah, where's risk being generated from? So risk is such a big topic. I'm sorry, that sounds like a very circumlocutory answer, but there's so many ways to come at it.
Yeah, there are. Um, Julie raises an issue which she mentions specifically CHSP, but I reckon the home care package services would feel much the same, that it's difficult to spend adequate time with clients to really properly assess some of these issues and set up strategies, especially when the main service delivery is domestic assistance. What's your comment on that?
I think bringing it I 100% appreciate those constraints. And I think what I would really hope people walk away from today is that if you can actually share this idea with your workforce, if you embed this with everybody, like that the things that we do every day bring us health and well-being, and that they understand why, um, all we're actually asking is that your staff, every time they walk into the house, is just looking for an opportunity. So I understand that greater care planning can be, quite complex, but if all of our staff are highly attuned to the fact that if I can just get this person to do part of this, then I know that I've worked on their balance a bit today, or I've got them to think for themselves a little bit more, and then progressively over time, as that person starts to perceive your confidence in them, they start to build slowly. Um, I think that's really what I'm looking for. I'm trying to demystify and make it less big, and just get everybody in your team to see those opportunities, no matter how small, and to start to habituate to facilitating those, which doesn't address the issue of like the time for a whole assessment. But my point being is that we can just routinely be facilitating people, which still has immense benefit.
Yeah, and you break it down to those small things. Think
Yeah.
about what the person definitely can't do, what they definitely can do, and just have those sorts of lenses over what the worker is doing with the person every day. And, it doesn't have to be a massive assessment, fully documented every last, thing. It's sometimes just about fairly simple, straightforward exercises, encouraging people to stay active
Yeah.
in daily life.
But we forget how important those activities are, that they are
Yeah.
health giving. So yeah, I think that's the take home message I'd like people to have, and that attitudinal change from a workforce perspective, and I'm not saying everybody needs to change. Some people are really on board, but I'm trying to simplify it. I hope I have, and then also getting an attitudinal change from our clients, and then we meet in the middle, and suddenly things take off. We hope.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kirsten. Been both a good presentation and a good discussion afterwards.
Great
So,
question. Thank you.
yes, thank you. And everyone using your React buttons.
Yes.
They're good to see.
And I hope everyone feels like they're all being heard by one another. You're all having really common experiences, which is the other beauty of that.